Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And today is really almost a perfect day for this presentation and also for this conference, because as you know and as you probably have read, today was the final vote in the European Parliament on the AI Act. And therefore, I can give you now, I think, a quite good overview of what is coming, how to assess it, and so on. What I will do in my 20 minutes, it's rather short time-wise, therefore I need to be precise. I will talk a little bit why the European Union was thinking about regulating AI. The second chapter or the second area I want to talk about is to single out 4 elements, conceptual elements in the AI Act, and what does those or do those elements mean legally, but also factually. And then as a third point, I want to talk a little bit about what does it mean for Europe, what does it mean for our citizens, what does it mean in comparison to the UK, to the US, to China, and so on and so on. Tomorrow, Dragos Tudorache will also talk to you, I think, online. He will be much more positive, probably, than I am. So I think it's a good combination, the two of us. Maybe to start with the first point, why the European Union regulated AI. Probably you heard it already before. It was part of the panel. AI, first of all, is nothing new. As you all know, already in the 40s, 50s of the last century, there were AI systems, and also for us as regulator, the most important point to realize is that there are already a lot of laws in place that are regulating AI in the European Union, but the same also here in the UK. So it's more about identifying certain legal gaps. You can have a read here about a few general points, but much more important is this slide. Because this slide was kind of the beginning of why the European Union became active, because 7 elements have been identified which kind of indicated that at least machine learning and deep learning AI systems, so the so-called second wave of AI, are not that close to what was already regulated before, and indeed created a certain legal gap. Just to focus maybe on 2, 3 of them: unpredictability. Even though we are not talking about AGI, that systems are now completely on their own, also with regard to autonomy, but there are now certain procedures or certain causes of actions that even experts cannot fully explain. So there is indeed some kind of opacity, so that those machines or those technologies are sometimes maybe creating a certain outcome that was not really foreseen. And this, of course, creates, for example, in liability, a huge legal gap, because if you don't really know why a certain person was harmed, well, who is then liable? Who needs to pay redress? Is it the operator who operates the AI system? Is it the manufacturer? And so on and so on. On all of those points, lawmakers in the European Union, but also outside the European Union, started their kind of discussions and thinking process. And this I want to make clear at the very beginning of my presentation, that if you now read a little bit what the European Union is doing with the AI Act, it's really, really important to underline that it's not another invention of the European Union because we like to do laws. We do, but it's really based again on international cooperation, on international frameworks, principles that all those organizations have worked on during the last years, actually 10, 15 years. You see here, for example, ISO and IEEE, so standardization bodies. You see GPI, an international organization, OECD, Council of Europe, UNESCO, and so on and so on, G7, G20, we're also now becoming more and more active here. So you really see, yes, there are many involved actors, and it's not only the European Union that is talking about it or certain Western countries. And the last point is rather interesting, and I took as a case study the OECD principles from 2019, that as you know, right now there are a lot of crises in the world. Let's look at climate change. Countries do not really achieve an agreement of what to do now, how to proceed best. On security matters, the world is even more divided. On AI, I would argue that this is a rather positive case, because here countries like China, like United States, like UK, like Canada, Brazil, and so on, were indeed able to agree on certain principles, which has now the kind of positive outcome that the Chinese automated decision-making law is taking into account similar principles as the OECD, as the AI Act, as the executive order in the United States, and so on and so on. So their first point, maybe to summarize, yes, the European AI Act is again another specific European technology law, but it's really based on internationally agreed principles and discussions. Now going a little bit more in deep in the EU AI Act. And as I said, I want to focus here particularly on 4 main issues. The AI Act is a rather weird combination of fundamental rights protection and the so-called new legislative framework. New legislative framework we in the European Union used for a lot of different technologies, products, so it's a typical product safety legislation that, one example would be medical device regulation, is saying for those devices you need to fulfill those and those minimum criteria in order to be deemed safe and in order to be able as a provider to place those products on the internal market of the European Union. This is important because let's say normal products like a vacuumer or a toy are often rather stable. They are not evolving. Now, an artificial intelligence system, as you all know, it's called evolving technology for a reason. So we are right now not really sure if those legal concepts that we have used are really the right fit for AI, and if the European AI Act will really work. And then the combination with fundamental rights protection is also something that in this rather clear ecosystem of product safety legislation is never tried before. And again, this leads to a rather big question mark if in the end the AI Act will be a success story or not. A second big element of the AI Act, and I would say here at the beginning at least a rather positive one, is that the AI Act is really focusing on the most risky AI systems. You have heard it, especially there's a list of prohibited AI technologies in Article 5, and then there's a whole chapter about what high-risk AI systems that are still allowed to being placed on the market need to fulfill in order to be safe enough. And the third and the fourth category basically don't need to fulfill much, or in the last case, even nothing in the AI Act. And the European Union, with this approach, wanted to achieve a situation where most of the provider of or developers of AI systems are not affected, and therefore that our innovation in AI is not hampered in the European Union. Another critical remark, the big problem with that is like what is currently happening, unfortunately, a lot. There was not really enough time spent in singling out those different risk categories and subcategories. It was more a kind of gut feeling of the EU legislator. Therefore, I think not enough case studies have been done. And now the big problem is, for example, we are prohibiting social scoring. But what is exactly social scoring? A huge question mark. Is suddenly a service from an insurance or a bank falling in these prohibitions? So also here, we don't really know what the AI Act will create in the future, if there is a huge legal uncertainty, or if this, in general, rather positive idea is working because it's complemented with additional guidelines or other things. A point that was at the beginning very bad, but I think is in the end rather positive, is that the final version of the European AI Act is taking really the whole AI value chain into account. The original proposal from the Commission was typical for a product safety legislation piece, only focusing again on those actors that are placing an AI system on the market, or those actors that are using it. But for example, all big platforms, or let's call it developers of data sets and so on, didn't have any role and were not regulated at all, which would have led to a situation that often those smaller companies that are bringing the final downstream AI product or service on the market would be actually not really able to comply with the AI Act because they are lacking the necessary information about the data set, about the general purpose AI system / foundation model, and so on and so on. So what the EU AI Act is now trying to do, as I said, is really bring the whole value chain together, still focusing on the downstream part of the value chain, but let's call it encouraging and sometimes also obliging the other actors in or along the value chain to really cooperate with each other. The fourth and final point of my short summary of the AI Act is going back to one of my previous points that I made at the very beginning, that there were already a lot of digital legislation pieces fully applicable in the European Union, and the AI Act is now, and I don't know if I actually find it, yes, it's here. So it's now just one additional piece. And as you see, the European Union has right now 116 EU laws for the digital sector. 77 laws are already applicable, others are still coming, like the AI Act. And it's another, I would say, rather big uncertainty how our European companies, and especially smaller companies, and also companies from the UK, if they want to be active in the European Union, are facing this, sometimes it's called digital regulatory tsunami that is now coming, because a lot of those blue, dark blue boxes are new laws. And again, for those companies, it would now mean not they only need to become compliant with the AI Act, but also the Data Act, the Digital Services Act, the Cyber Resilience Act, and so on and so on. And A sub-point is that there are also a growing number of enforcement and governance bodies that are also not really aligned with each other. It's not a coherent system, and probably in the next months or maybe even years, there will be a lot of competence struggles between all those different actors. Meaning, again, for small companies, to whom do I talk if I'm creating an AI financial service product? Is it the European Central Bank? Is it the EBA or EBB here? Or is it the AI office here, and so on and so on. So there is really a big question mark over the AI Act, and I tried to summarize it here a little bit. And this kind of also represents my really mixed feelings that I have after almost 3 years working on this law, and now for 7 years working on AI policy in Brussels. We managed to really do great things with the AI Act. We created a very cooperative and dynamic AI law, which is a little bit, let's call it, a new school of how to do lawmaking. We have this international alignment point that I made at the beginning. We also took over those international principles, but made it rather flexible. So it's really a principle-based legislation, which is, of course, the only way how to regulate all AI systems, all those different use cases, different sectors, and so on. We have in the third point the burden sharing, which is much fairer and again involves now also large digital platforms helping smaller players to become compliant. We have new tools how to facilitate compliance, like technical standards. So once you are designing your product based on those technical standards, you would be you would have a presumption of compliance. In the end, a rather cheap and fast way to prove your compliance. And there are, the final point, a lot of mechanisms to make sure that stakeholders, experts, real experts that are knowing what a deep learning system is, can engage with the regulator, can engage with the enforcement bodies. They can bring in or contribute use cases that they think do not pose a risk. They can have a kind of regulatory learning with the enforcement bodies in regulatory sandboxes, and so on and so on. And with all those points, I think the AI Act will be constantly changing, will be adjusted, which is, in my opinion, the only chance to keep up with such a dynamic field like artificial intelligence. Quickly to the negative points. As I said, a new legislative framework, product safety, it's a lot of concepts that, in my opinion, do not work with artificial intelligence. There is the thing, I was 2 times now this month in London, and everything I'm getting there from developers is the AI Act forces us to do conformity assessments, technical documentation, risk assessments basically every 2 days. Because our systems are changing non-stop, then a substantial modification is happening, and this would mean that you need to, as I just said, do everything again. So this legal framework, in my opinion, is really the wrong fit for AI. The horizontal scope, covering all those different sectors and use cases, as I just showed you also with those slides, will lead to a lot of legal overlaps and, in my opinion, a governmental or governance chaos that probably needs some time to be solved. Vague legal text and unclear procedures will also lead to more and more legal uncertainty, especially in those first months and years after the AI Act becomes applicable. We in Germany are completely traumatized still with GDPR application in 2018, and in my opinion, we didn't really learn from those events. As I said, the prohibitions and the high-risk use cases are also rather blurry. It's unclear if I am, as a developer in the future, falling under a prohibition or under high risk, and what does it mean? And the last point, one of the biggest challenges, and here in the UK you saw it with Stability AI, which was doing the data training outside the European Union and is now facing a big problem legally here. The same issue we also have in continental European Union. Big question mark over data protection rules. We also heard already about copyright rules. How do I train in an EU law compliant way? How do I access high quality data sets? Unfortunately, the AI Act is not saying much about it. If I can speak 2-3 minutes longer, then I would just quickly make the conclusion on in my third chapter. So as you saw now with the AI Act, I think the European Union is trying to do good things and actually is also doing certain positive steps, but in the grand scheme of international, let's say, the international race for, let's call it AI leadership, I personally think the EU will not manage to catch up, and probably the gap towards China and the USA will really be even stronger. You see here a little bit the different AI policies that I will not go into. Here is kind of what the third way on AI from the European Union should be, and why this is different from the Chinese and the US approach. But I will focus a little bit on this slide as my almost last slide, to underline again the problems that we are now facing in the next weeks and months in the European Union. First of all, if I am with my more negative view than Dragos tomorrow are correct, then I think companies in the European Union will really hesitate to invest and develop in AI, because there is just everywhere legal uncertainty in the text, in how to engage with enforcement bodies and so on. And as you all know, companies need legal certainty. Also, researchers, like here from the University Edinburgh, need legal certainty in order to do research. If we have now a kind of transition period where this legal certainty is not there, and we are already lagging behind other regions of the world, I think it will not be positive for AI development and AI deployment in the European Union, and could lead to a situation that most EU companies are saying, well, it's too risky to do it ourselves, so better buy it at Google, Facebook, and so on, because there I can get a full package and know that it's not me who is facing certain enforcement measures. The second point, I don't talk now long about it, but again, in my opinion, as a lawyer, there is a huge question mark if this legal approach that the AI Act is taking is really working, or, as I said already, if concepts like substantial modification are indeed not at all conceptually able or capable to deal with evolving systems like AI. The third point we saw already in the GDPR and a lot of other digital laws of the European Union that, let's say, as a result of point 1 and 2, often, especially smaller market players, are kind of forced to either, as I said in the first point, draw on, let's call it US tech cooperation products and services, or draw on very expensive third-party conformity assessment, third-party auditing, which is good for international law firms and big for accounting firms like Ernst & Young, but raises the prices, and again is probably something that, especially for smaller market players, will prevent them from engaging in this field. And the fourth point I also talked a lot about already, that in my opinion there is just a too complicated, overcomplicated let's say, governance systems, which we all know from all national states with ministries. If you have too many players that are responsible for a topic, you have a competition struggle, and this will probably need a few months or even years to be solved. And now really final slide. Our only chance now as European Union to overcome those problems is, in my opinion, a much more comprehensive view on AI. We need to further complement the AI Act via guidelines. We need to hope that those technical standards are adequate, and so on and so on. But then we should also think about other points that are important when it comes to AI, about how to invest in better researchers, how to transfer our knowledge from academia into businesses, what is with the security element, what is about synergy effects with sustainability, and so on and so on. I really hope that the next European Commission after the election in June is doing that and kind of complementing the AI Act with all those additional things. Then I think maybe the AI Act, let's call it legal ecosystem, has a chance and will work. Without those things, right now, I would say it will really hamper European innovation in AI and would be kind of having a counter effect than what we wished to happen. Here are my contact details, and I will also stick around if there are further questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.